When I grew up, I believe I was royalty. In my brain, I was a princess that was destined for castles, crowns, and shiny gowns. This is ironic, as I grew up poor in El Segundo Barrio, the second ward in El Paso, Texas. By growing up poor, I'm not talking about the mom driving past McDonald's because we have food at home poor. I mean the mom can't even drive past a McDonald's in the first place because we couldn't afford gas kind of poor. But little, barely sentient me did not care. I was a princess. The princess of the second ward. I was raised by teen parents who tried their hardest to shield me from the world and all its injustices. I think they did this not because they felt guilty for becoming a teen pregnancy statistic, but because that was their way of coping amongst themselves, that their lives weren't completely shifted by this tiny little living organism that they now had thrust upon them, the responsibility of raising and nurturing. So I don't blame them for that one bit. The shielding was a blessing and a curse. On one hand, I have only recently come to grips with my life, my background, and my circumstances, and I'm forced to reckon with all the lies I was told to keep me ignorant of my surroundings. But on the other hand, I was happy, carefree, innocent, worry-free, and happy. One example of this happy ignorance involves 6-year-old me, a Tinkerbell dress, and a roll of quarters, or rather, a lack of a roll of quarters. Here's some background. We had to drive to a local laundromat whenever we had to do laundry, since we couldn't afford to do our own laundry at home. Once or twice a month, my grandpa Manny and my grandma Chayo and I would hop in my grandma's white Ford Explorer, load up our pile of dirty clothes that accumulated from our crowded 6-person household, and drove about 5 minutes to our local laundromat that was tucked away behind a car wash and a shopping center. There would always be police tape covering the entrance to the parking lot, so we would usually go through the back. The other shops next to this laundromat would switch out fairly often, but that oasis of archaic technology and mildew would always remain. The laundromat had those loud washer and dryer machines that ran on quarters depending on the time you needed to wash your clothes. Now, in a house with 6 people, I am no mathematician, but I'm pretty sure that adds up to quite a few quarters needed to get all our laundry done. In my house, spare change was a luxury. We'd save every penny we could get our hands on. We'd get giddy over finding a quarter on the floor of a shading parking lot. All this penny pinching, literally, was so we could avoid incidents like this. While out on our laundry doing adventure, my grandma Child looks at my grandpa and says, "We don't have any coins." Because there's not much we could have done, and my family never believed in asking anyone for help, especially when it came down to financial troubles. So, defeated, my grandpa turned around and drove back home. My grandpa decided that if we could all just hold on washing the clothes for the week, we could scrounge up enough money by the time the next weekend arrived. And so the penny pinching began. For my family, this situation was indicative of one of the lowest points in their lives. They couldn't even scrounge up enough change to provide their kids and grandchild with the clean clothes, the bare minimum. That has got to have a negative effect of your perception of the world. But nah, not little 6-year-old Jaime. It was my dream come true. My strategy went as such. No clean clothes meant I can wear my cherished Tinkerbell dress all day and all night, all week long. Now, this dress wasn't all practical or comfortable. The cheap tulle that lined the skirt part of the dress made me itchy every time I moved, and the glitter decals that were applied onto the dress using what I presume to be the weakest adhesive ever would get everywhere, as glitter tends to do. And the color was faded because I wore it so often, but so be it. In my mind, I was the prettiest girl ever. I was a fantastical Disney character, and I was going to own it. Through the week, that dress got stained. Bad. As any little kid would, I just lived in it. At some point, I'd stopped looking like a Disney princess and more like those off-brand knockoffs you find downtown. So as the week came to a close, we found the money through some serious Mexican ingenuity and budgeting. My mom had to peel off that dress and wash it along with my other clothes. And the worst of best week of mine and my family's lives were over. Earlier, looking back, no kid should have had to go on a week without clean clothes. And it is so sad the lengths my family had to go through to make do with our circumstances. On the other hand, I look at the tragic happenings of my early years fondly, as that's the time when I began to take shape. Those memories at that laundromat where my grandparents and I got close. After we finished, if we had enough money, we would go to the Sonic Drive-In down the street and get ice cream cones, or we would sit outside and talk about our lives. It didn't matter that we were struggling financially. All that mattered to me was the time I spent with my grandparents and how, to this day, all those days at the laundromat and all those struggles shaped my relationship with my family for the better. I guess, with this story I'm trying to say, cherish your loved ones, no matter what situation you may be in. Because at the end of the day, nothing fiscal or nothing financial can ever be more important to you than the people you love.